to make sure that we are up and running. Yes, we are live. Hello, my friends. Hello, peace lovers and peacemakers. This is Sara Jamshidi with Matin Rokhsefat. Welcome to Peace Mindedly, a podcast show featuring peaceful bridge makers. Speaking of which, peaceful bridge makers, I have a sad news to share today. One of our peaceful bridge makers and one of our guests that was very, very dear to me and to my audience passed away this week, and my deep condolences to her family and to her friends. So Laleh Bakhtiar was an Islamic and Sufi scholar. Laleh was the first American Muslim woman translated Quran from Arabic to English. Laleh wrote and edited more than 70 books, and she was a scholar in residence in Qazi Publication in Chicago. She was 82 years old. She passed away this Sunday at her home at peace, and I have been contacted with her families, and everyone is doing fine. But I mean, because of the pandemic and what's going on, they are just trying to manage the things as best as they can. So again, my condolences, mine and Matin, to Laleh Bakhtiar family and her friends. We lost a great woman. Speaking of peace and speaking of peace building and peace authors, here it is. I mean, I have a great privilege of speaking with authors who has dedicated their life to building peace and making peace among small groups and large groups. So I have three talented writers who has written a book. So I do have the book here. I just want to show the book, Compassionate Conversation, How to Speak and Listen from the Heart. So I am going to bring each one of my writers to the screen. Diane Hamilton is an award-winning professional mediator. She teaches Zen meditation. She is the executive director of Two Arrows Zen. Through her organization, Diane offers training programs to personal development and advanced facilitator training. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Very good. I have Gabriel Menegale. So do I say the middle name right? Menegale?
It's Italian, so it's Menegale.
Menegale. Okay, it even sounds more fascinating. Menegale. I love it. So Gabriel Menegale Wilson is a leadership coach, organizational change consultant, and one of the authors for Compassionate Conversations. Gabe, as he was referred in the book, is a peace builder with specialty in diversity and inclusion. And I have with us Kimberly Loh. Hello. So Kimberly is the other author of Compassionate Conversations. Kimberly is conflict resolution and negotiation specialist. She helps conscious leaders and teams to level up their human relationships in order to transform conflict into opportunities. I am so excited. I also want to bring Matin to the screen, so then we have everyone who is working for this program. So everyone, welcome so dearly. Thank you so much for being with us for this program.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really happy to be here.
Yes, Matin is on the back screen helping me out to just figure out all of the details about this program. But for the sake of starting our conversation, I really would love you, each one of you, if you could please share a story about your childhood or something that you really resonates with you and you want us to know about you. So Diane, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, I think maybe what I'd like to share is that I've been a practicing meditator for very many years. I started meditation formally in my 20s, but I think it came because I spent so much time as a child riding horses in the mountains and got very used to to sitting upright and being quiet and listening and just simply being available. So that's a big part of my background, is my relationship to animals and nature.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Amazing. My daughter, 10-year-old, loves horses, and I'm sure she's going to listen to the program. I'm sure.
Great. Wonderful.
Yes, Gabe. So, yeah, can you tell us something about yourself that you would like us to know?
Yeah, I think, well, thank you again for having me on the show and for having us on the show. I'm the product of a Black U.S. Father, and my mother is of European descent, but she was born in Brazil. She is white. And the conversations in my household were always about our differences. And, you know, I think when my parents got married, some folks on my dad's side of the street weren't too thrilled about their partnership. But once I came onto the scene, people cozied up to me and they cozied up to my parents. And so there is this way that integrating our differences has always been part of my life and part of my journey.
Excellent, excellent. And Kim, yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Can I share about me? So I was born in London, and my parents were Malaysian Chinese, and I grew up wondering, having questions about belonging, having questions about how to connect with people, and moving around a lot when I was younger between the UK and Hong Kong and Singapore. I just found myself being really observant of different cultures, of different ways of expressing, of different ways of having difficult conversations. And so I suppose I was just sort of grew up with this inquiry of like, how can we meaningfully connect? And what would it be like to actually, you know, learn from our differences in a way that's enlivening and actually bonding and does good for our relationships rather than creating, you know, for fear or suspicion. So, yeah.
Excellent segment. Excellent segment. So speaking of which, compassionate conversation, compassionate listening. Why is it so difficult? Whoever would like to go first.
Well,
Diane,
I can begin. I think we're natural listeners, and we have all the equipment we need in terms of being able to receive a message and to feel what someone else feels and to take in and empathize with the experience. But it's very difficult for us to hold two things in the mind at once. So usually our own experience is front and center. And in order to really be able to listen compassionately, we actually have to let go and set aside our own opinion, our own reference points, our own experience. And we're not very good at that. So once we can set our own view aside, it becomes much easier to listen, but that's where the challenge is.
That's where the challenge is. So how do you do this in group gatherings? So yes, tell me when you have a group of people who want to encourage them to listen compassionately. How do you do that?
Well, if you ask a group, so one of the things that you can read about in the book, Compassionate Conversations, is that when we set up and the three of us work together, lots of times with very different sized groups, when you begin a conversation, one of the things that we always do is we create a set of ground rules. And almost inevitably, when you ask a group, would you like one of these ground rules to be that we listen well? Everybody agrees. And so it's simply a matter of getting agreement that we're all going to practice listening. Sometimes we'll take turns and reflect what we heard people say, but that as soon as we start not listening as facilitators or people in the conversation, we can interrupt and say, hey, let's make sure that we're really hearing one another. So I think getting agreement or creating a ground rule is one way to do it. Most of us can do it when we're reminded.
Mm-hmm. So what are the ground rules for your groups, Gabe?
Yeah, so the ground rules that Diane's referring to, we have a set. They're also in the book, Compassionate Conversations. The first one is be for each other. I'll just list them out, and if you want to go into them, we can. Be for each other. Listen well. Talk straight, or just real talk. Support and challenge. Praise is really important, particularly in conflict conversation where there is conflict. And then there's a confidentiality agreement. with respect to the privacy of the space, so that we can be free to be who we are and show up as we will.
Mm-hmm. So ground rules of compassionate listening. Kim, are they missing anything?
Ground rules for compassionate listening. I think one thing that I would just love to encourage people into when they hear about this ground rule or this suggestion is to just think of a time when you have felt so personally comforted, seen, valued for who you are. I think that I would encourage people to keep that in mind. It can be such a nourishing human experience. And particularly if for that person, maybe for you, you're bringing something forward that's been challenging, involves suffering, maybe involves referring to a legacy that you come from. And so something that you carry with you into the now. And so compassionate listening, I think, offers us this real gift of being seen on our own terms. And I think that it's a gift that we can offer each other. And it's something that's very worth our practice, because if we know how good it feels, then surely we're going to also want to be able to know how to create that experience for others too.
Absolutely. So one thing I love about the book is that you are somehow vulnerable because you are sharing your personal stories. So it's about you, and that makes it really fascinating. So therefore, I decided to be a bit more vulnerable myself and share a story and get your opinion about, honestly, what might be some of the best ways. So Martin and I, we are hosting and we are managing. So it's me and Julie. We are a Muslim and Jewish, and we are managing Sisterhood of Salam Shalom. So often we decided to just stay away from Palestine and Israel because it's very contested. It's very difficult thing to talk about. And then each time that we started talking about, so people get agitated. So what is your suggestion for us in our group? We are about probably 20-25 people, and we do our best not to take side. We do our best to listen compassionately, but we need to learn a lot. So what are the first lessons you think we need to do in our group? Gabe, go.
Yeah, I think we'll go around the bend here, but the ingredient I would throw into your group would be just to get really clear on what the shared intention of that group is. And we talk a lot about this in the book. There's a lot of difference in conflict, of course. It's always important to assert the sameness, the things that we have in common. And that shared intention is a very reliable place to begin as an anchor point to come back to, especially when things get difficult, almost as a way of remembering why we're in this conversation, as a way of staying in it more fully. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So staying in it fully and shared intention. What else should we try, Diane, do you think?
Well, I think it helps to know a little something about how our nervous system works, and to know that when we agree and we're the same, our nervous system relaxes. And as soon as we start to differ, the nervous system gets excited. And the more we differ, the nervous system becomes threatened. So I would suggest that you start by creating a shared intention, like Gabe mentioned, and a period of time where you're going to start out and give 15 minutes to everything we agree about in relationship to the conflict. And then 15 minutes, what do we disagree about? And really expect that you're not going to feel at ease when you talk about the differences, and then return for 15 minutes to what we've learned and what we agree about by being willing to listen to our differences. So start with agreement, move into difference, move back into agreement, and feel what happens in your body.
Excellent. Kim, so do you think that we can do this without a mediator? Because almost all the time we fail if we are just going right into the conversation and there is no one in between to guide the whole thing.
Yeah, sure. Oh, well, I suppose the gift of a mediator, or what would be so wonderful, is to have that impartiality or pro-partiality, being for everyone. So it can be so helpful to have that person. At the same time, though, I trust that the goodwill in our human relationships and our curiosity as human beings, and also hopefully for many of us, the capacity to be reflective of who we are, how are we coming across. I believe in all of us human beings like having that, and it's something that we can cultivate and grow. And the more that we have the ability to take perspectives on ourselves and the willingness to be humble and receive feedback from others, I think we can go a long way without mediators too. And I imagine from the ways that you're speaking and from what I think I'm learning about your organization and the group of you, your people are coming together with strong hearts and a care about peace. And so I think that would set you in very good stead.
Excellent. So I'm not going to let you off the hook. I'm going to come back and I'm going to request more stories and more practical terms from you, Kim, probably, because I know that you've been a professional mediator, and all of you. But I wonder what happened, why you decided first of all, tell me, how did you meet? I mean, how did you meet each other?
Well, I can start with my way into it. I heard Diane on a podcast maybe like 8 years ago or something like that. And I was in a different space time in my life. I was still a lawyer. I was in Singapore actually at that time, sitting by a river, listening to this podcast and thinking like, oh, wow, like what is being described, this way of being, I don't know, expanded my perspectives on how to engage conflict and furthermore, how to bring in some of the more spiritual dimensions to the work. And so that's what kind of really turned me on to Diane's work, and that's the entry point I can share.
Excellent. And then how did you reach out to her?
How did I reach out to you, Diane? I think maybe I got drift of her website, started listening to more things. When Diane brought out her first book, Everything is Workable, it's like turning point in my life. And so the invitation then years later to co-author among the three of us is just like the most beautiful full circle in my life.
Excellent. Excellent. Gabe.
Yeah. I think I was around 25. And
you're 25 years old?
No, then I'm 33 now, which is not
I'm teasing you.
Yeah, you could say I was initiated into some transformative experiences. Like I had some health issues. There were a lot of questions I was asking myself about what it means to be a human being, honestly. And so I was seeking for teachers, which is a whole other story in and of itself. But there was a desire for a teacher, and Diane represented two things that were critical in my life. One was meditation. And then two was integral theory, which we weave in the book throughout. We don't explicitly talk about it too much, but integral theory is just a holistic way of relating to human development. Let's put it that way for now. And she embodied both of those, and I was bold enough, shot some emails to many different email addresses, and one came back, and we connected that way.
Excellent. So I'm not going to bore you, Diane, with the same question. It seems that all the points goes back to you. But when I was reading the book, I kept reading and hearing Zen meditation. Can you tell us what is Zen meditation?
So meditation is a fundamental, very basic spiritual practice. Mother Teresa said that when one prays, one speaks to God, and when one meditates, one listens. So usually people who perform meditation do it in some sort of sitting posture, either on the ground or on a chair. And the basic point is to be grounded and upright and to allow the heart to be extended. And then by using the breath to quiet the mind, and to really turn down kind of the volume on language and activity in our cognitive mind, and to actually become present in the here and now. And so by turning down language, we turn down our referencing past and future. We become present in the here and now, deeply available to our intuition, to our natural energy, and in this case, to the natural great peace, which is our true nature. Our truest nature when the mind is quiet is peaceful. So meditation is the vehicle for accomplishing and really in training oneself to experience peace, regardless of conditions.
Excellent. Why do we call it Zen?
There are different schools in the Buddhist tradition. There's the Southern Indian school. It's called Theravada. It moves through Burma and Thailand. And then there's Tibetan Buddhism in Tibet. And then Zen is the Buddhism that kind of moved from China through East Asia, through Korea and Japan, and then eventually to the West. So Zen is the Buddhism that's indigenous to China, to Japan, and Korea.
Is this a name of a person or a school of thought or a school of practice?
It's a school. It's just a school of practice. It's called Chan in China and Zen in Japan.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so Gabe, what are the main characteristics of listening with heart?
Oh, golly, that's a great question. So Diane she likes to compare meditation to listening. And when we're listening wholeheartedly, what we're doing is really relaxing our own points of view, relaxing our body and mind in service of receiving the points of view of another, right? And in the act of listening, obviously there is the intention of comprehension. Like, I want to understand what the other person is saying, of course. And when we're listening with our whole body, with our heart, we're also picking up the nonverbal communications of people. And in reflecting back what we listen to, we want to give the person the experience of being understood, but also heard. Like, really giving that person the experience of feeling received is tremendously relaxing to that other person who is speaking. And in a very fundamental way, listening is kind of the gold star skill in creating sameness, right? In joining with that person, in being the same. Yeah.
Excellent. Kim, when we are not listening compassionately, what are we missing?
What are we missing? We're missing the opportunity to open ourselves up to someone else's reality, to their sort of human experience. We're missing out on the opportunity to connect with them meaningfully from a place of curiosity, without just doing what we might do habitually or unconsciously, which is bring in our own storylines about what's happening, what the other person's experience is, why they are the ways that they are. We have a lot of cultural ways of being that we carry with us. And so we're missing out on the opportunity to kind of cut through that and go to something more, just meeting people where they're at and giving them that opportunity to like share with us. It's kind of a privilege to be able to hear someone's story, on a profound level. So that's what I'd say we're missing out on when we don't listen compassionately.
Absolutely. So I just realized that in every episode I mention I am from Iran, from revolution, from war correspondence. So I've seen lots of casualties, dead bodies, lots of big men fighting, all of those. But here's the thing, coming into the peace and reaching out to being in a state of peace, it's damn difficult thing. It's damn difficult. And I wonder why it's so difficult and I always think that we cannot reach peace without going through war. It's my understanding of news and media and coverage and blah, blah, blah. But what I wonder is I think this is true. Is this true? And why it's difficult to go through all of those processes to basically and finally understand that this is where we should be. Diane, go
Would
ahead.
it be okay if I just reflected what I heard you say? Because I felt it was very powerful. Yeah. So I'll start there and then I'll get to your question. But basically, Sarah, what I heard you say is that you were from Iran and you've spent a lot of time both growing up and also in your profession in situations of conflict. And you've seen the devastation and you've seen the injury and you've seen the death. And our impulse towards war is very, very real for you. So because of that, you have a really strong understanding of how hard it is for human beings to choose peace and to really cultivate and deepen and exercise our capacities for peace. And I would say why it's so difficult for us is because through our evolutionary history, we viewed other people as threats. And we have always fought, and basically we're starting to outgrow that. There's some research that's been done, and Steven Pinkers has done some research at MIT that says we actually are becoming less violent. So your point is exactly true. It's very difficult for us. It's our default mode. We tend to go towards fighting and towards protecting ourselves in that way. And gradually, as we mature as human beings, it should become easier, and does.
Yeah, inshallah, we say in Islamic tradition, inshallah means God willing. But what do you think, Kim and Gabe? Do you think reaching to the state of peace is damn difficult?
Well, one thing that I'd love to speak to, and this is it's a really big question, and it's something that I also do think about very much. Like, what does it take for us to change? Maybe is one way that I might think about it. And I think there's something true in what you're saying, that sometimes we need to go through the conflict. Like, we can't bypass it. Like, there's a reason why it's happening. I was recently rereading the graphic novel version of The Alchemist, and they're looking down on a scene, and there's tension. There's tension. There's rebels out there. You know, we're not sure what's happening. And one of the characters says, this war could take a while because God is on both sides. And it really deeply moved me, you know, and I really could feel into that. I could feel into, like, what are the needs, the desires, the hopes of people on both sides. And very often, you know, if we sort of crystallize to the essence, it's for safer futures for our children. It's so that they won't have to go through what we did, so that we can have access to the water and share it fairly with our people. You know, these are actually very tender, pure, and very humane sort of aspirations. And so I do think, like, the conflict is happening because we haven't somehow found the more inclusive solution, so that these things are both given their space and then worked with in parallel. You know, like, how can we weave together a story of the future that will meet all of those legitimate needs and hungers that we have? So that's what I would say is, like, yes, sometimes we do need to go through the conflict, and that we don't want to get afraid of it because we can't cope with it. And also, like, you know, we have things like cancel culture and just cutting people off, and these days, and I have sadness when I think about that, because I think there's something right in all the sides. And if we can learn to weave that story together to include all of our humanities, then we're doing something very real with the conflict, so that we can transcend it.
Inshallah. And Gabe, do you think peace is difficult, or is it just my assumption?
I'm with you. We're the same in that, Sarah, for sure. And yeah, thank you to Diane and Kim. I'm very moved by your sharing. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in your framing, Sarah, with respect to, I think we need to go through it. As Kim was pointing to, absolutely. There's an intelligence in conflict. Conflict, as Diane says, is super good news. All right. And so from a certain point of view, when conflict arises, it could signal to us if we choose to. And I think it always boils down to the choice, Sarah. For me, I always have to choose to engage in a compassionate conversation. It's not something that just happens because it happens. It happens through my own choosing. And when I make that choice, I will be transformed. Whether the conversation results in a good end, I will be different for having made that choice throughout that conversation. But I think that there's something, compassion arises at the same time as suffering does, or it arises to meet suffering, right? Compassion is this movement towards suffering and its resolution in a way. And so I think that from that point of view, it's an opportunity for us to make that choice. It presents us the choice to be more peaceful, to be more compassionate, and it's for us to make that choice. So I think every time we do, it's a step in the direction. And it's a long one, for sure.
Absolutely. Inshallah. So stay put with me. I'm going to come back. You are watching To Peace Mindedly, a podcast show featuring peaceful bridge makers. So let me see where I was at. Yes. We are, here's what's happening. So I have Matin on the end side of the program, and then she's taking comments and questions. Share with us if you have comment, if you have question. We make sure to ask from our guests, or also email us, editor@goldtune.com. I receive all of the emails on our end, and then we can just read it through and ask the questions from our guests. So yes, we are live on many social media channels, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Periscope, YouTube. It's very easy to find us. Also, the same program goes live on 11 podcast channels, and it's very easy to find our authors and our guests. Speaking of which, I also wanted to mention that this season is our second season. We go live every Tuesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time. So we started September 1st. Our last program is going to be about food, because we are going to get close to Thanksgiving. The last program is November 24th, and then after that we come back with our third season that we're booking our guests for at the beginning of February 2021. Believe it or not, it's just times goes so fast. For next episode, I'm talking with Shahla Ha'iri, an associate professor of anthropology and former director of the Women's Studies program at Boston University. Ha'iri's latest book, Unforgettable Queens of Islam, Succession, Authority, and Gender, is a landmark study of extraordinary biographies of Muslim women rulers. Ha'iri picked her queens from medieval Yemen, India, modern Pakistan, Indonesia to showcase Muslim women power when the written history of Islam is overwhelmingly masculine. These women reached the height of their political time, and we are going to learn a lot. They are both ancient queens and also the recent Muslim women superpower that we are going to learn about them. After that, I'm talking with Jessica Goudeau, author of After the Last Border, Two Families and the Story of Refugees in America. It's going to be Tuesday, November 3rd. It's election day, and I'm begging you to please vote, because in my opinion, I covered many presidential elections in many different countries. So I believe that this is one of the most important elections of our lifetime, and I'm hoping that you truly decide to cast your vote. I have already voted, so for the record. After Jessica, we are talking with Sertaç Sehilkoglu about women desire in Turkey. Believe it or not, women desire. So I am very excited about the conversation and about Sertaç research, because for longest time, at least a portrait of Muslim in the Middle East, in the Gulf region, is that they are backward, they are oppressed, they are not sexy, they are not this, and they are not that, but we're going to prove everyone wrong. I'm hoping that we're going to prove everyone wrong. For this hour, we're talking with three amazing authors and peacemakers, peace builders, peacekeepers. Their book, Compassionate Conversations, How to Speak and Listen from the Heart. So Diane Musho Hamilton has dedicated her life to Zen meditation, peace building, and peace advocacy. When she directed the Office of Alternative Dispute Resolution for the Utah Judiciary, Diane established meditation program throughout the court system. She won several prestigious awards for her work. Her accolades include the Utah Judicial Administration Awards, the Utah Council on Conflict Resolution, Peacekeeping Awards, and many others. Diane runs Two Arrows Zen and one of the three authors for Compassionate Conversations. And I have Gabe Wilson is the organizational change consultant and peace builder with specialty in diversity and conclusion. His work is focused on social justice, purpose-driven enterprises, design thinking, and human development. He is referred to Gabe in the book, and this is what I'm calling him. And Kim Loh is a peace builder and negotiation specialist. Her past work includes peace building and meditation research, mediation research, advocacy for the United Nations, advocacy for international NGOs and universities. She is a lawyer for international mediation and legal litigations in London and Singapore. She's referred to Kim in the book, and this is what I'm calling her. Okay, so excited about the book, their book, Compassionate Conversations, how to speak and listen from the heart. So at the end of, okay, Kim, I promise to come back to you. So can you tell me or give me an example of your work when you were doing, when you were mediator, and then you just needed to bring these two groups together? What is the story? Do you have a story for us, if you could share that? Whether or not the discussion ended up in peace or not in peace, or just curious. I'm putting you on the spot. I'm on time.
It's good. It's getting me to like dig in some memory bank. One conversation that is coming to mind was one where I wasn't necessarily brought in as a mediator, but I found that the role that I had been given was actually allowed me to be somewhat well placed in understanding two sides of a story. And it was when I was working as a researcher and a writer on behalf of, being hired by a university, but to work specifically with these women peacemakers who had been chosen they have, invitations for people from all around the world to send in, examples of their work and who they are. And then they choose these women to kind of highlight their stories and write about them and give them this honor of this attention, and also to inspire, to grow the field. So I was being given this work of working with these women peacemakers. And then there came this moment where they brought in, how should we call, like international partners, potential partners. They were looking for some of the women's work to perhaps be taken up by others who could have access to different kinds of resources by association of their agency or who they worked with. And some of them were representing state bodies, and then some of them were just really big INGOs. And I had been based in New York for a few years by that point. So from working in and among the UN system, I had more of an idea of like how it worked on that macro level. And so bringing these two together and sitting in this room, I was there and I was seeing myself as assisting, as supporting these women peacemakers, but actually my knowledge of what that world was that they were seeking to appeal to and get the attention of allowed me to do, it's not so much mediation, but more of a shuttle diplomacy, actually, where I could sit with the women and hear them and help them maybe put it, what's the language that we can use? How can we, connect this into the meaning that they are making from this situation so that we can propose these beneficial win-win ideas? And then on the other hand, go and speak to these other people who might not have had, they cared so much. They wanted to be inclusive. They didn't want to, continue to play out stereotypes of what it is to work with, say, marginalized groups or those in lower power positions, and create more sensitivity on their side. Like, how are we engaging with them? And so the going back and forth was really interesting for me as a role.
Yes. So I wonder, in the book, at the end of every chapter, you offer practice. And you offer how to do things. So Diane and Gabe, what are some of the practices that you really like and you think that we should do?
Go ahead, Gabe.
I won't go into it because we've talked about it so much, but listening is a gold star practice. Do it. It's like the first thing to go away in conflict is listening.
how to listen is important, or just this listen for the sake of listening?
Both, but I want to emphasize the willingness to, just the willingness, the choice to listen, and then you practice for sure. But just the intention to listen is so important, so important. You know, another one that we talk about, I think it's chapter 15. We have a chapter on shadow, and not to get too much into the term, but basically we project, we ascribe characteristics to the people we're in conflict with that actually might be characteristics that we have, that we're also modeling. They're so aggressive, like that group is so aggressive, right? But the also truth of the matter is that maybe my group is aggressive, right? And so just doing that work helps establish greater humanity and understanding with the party that you're in opposition with. It's like, oh, I can understand why they're aggressive. Right? Because I understand the reasons why I'm aggressive.
Yeah.
So that's a very helpful practice.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a poignant point, because it brings me to my next question. Diane, we keep talking about listening with heart, and listening and speaking with heart. But sometimes we are in a space where people are just too aggressive. So how to handle those people, you think? I mean, you want to give a share how to handle?
Well, it just, again, it kind of depends a little bit on what the intention is. But let's imagine for a moment, I'm in a conversation with a family member. And for just a moment, we're talking about the election, and everyone knows the election is, depending on your perspective right now, really difficult to talk about. And then all of a sudden, my family member starts to behave towards me in a way that I find aggressive and kind of assaultive. And I might be able to say, hey, I really want to hear what you have to say. I actually really care about it. But what I notice is you're expressing yourself in a way that's making it really hard for me to listen. So I wonder if we could both just take a moment to calm ourselves for a minute, because I do want to hear what you have to say. So here's what I'm hearing. But I need to ask you actually to turn the volume down a little bit so I can actually hear you. So sometimes, lots of times we can make a request and that will change people. Sometimes we have to say, hey, if you keep being aggressive towards me, I'm going to be aggressive towards you. And you know, that's where that's going to take us. So occasionally matching the aggression can be helpful, but more often than not, just requesting a little bit, let's come into a relationship so we can hear one another. When I get upset like that, my son, who's 30, he says to me, he has Down syndrome, and he always says to me, easy windmill, easy windmill. That helps a lot.
Very nice, very nice. So I want you to rate each other about compassionate listening. So what are the strengths and what are the shortcomings of your partners in compassionate listening?
Do you mean sort of between us, what we found?
Yeah.
It depends on the day, Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah likes a little conflict. You're going to see her a little bit. Yeah,
I'm a journalist. What can I do?
Yeah, what can you say? Yeah.
Well, I will say
conflict is exciting, you know.
Yeah, and I don't know about a grade, but I mean, so Diane and I both live in Salt Lake City, so we interact a good amount. And you know, I've been trained by Diane, and I'm also a young person, and I'm ambitious and whatever. And we had a bit of a misunderstanding or a difference between us in terms of me wanting to do my thing versus doing something together, especially in the context of this book. I was like, I want to do my thing, you know. And she was great in receiving me. And then simultaneously, she also gave me a challenge, and I listened and tried to receive that challenge. So for me, I think I just want to like kind of uplift the dynamism that at least I experience in my relationship with Kim and Di, where there's a lot of give and take, and that allows for more challenge to be in the space. So if I could give that a whole grade, I think we do pretty good.
Yes, I think you're doing it very good. So, Kim, what is the shortcomings of the other partners, or what do you praise them for?
I think for Diane, I would praise her boundless capacity, sort of to be present. And sometimes when I'm in my own, experience, I can feel like I'm ricocheting off myself, right? Because the feelings are strong. And sitting in Diane's presence and being able to share just feels incredibly spacious. That's what I would praise her for. If there's a shortcoming, sometimes I think it's not so much a shortcoming, but it's about my reticence, because I grew up in British socialized world, but then also in Chinese informed socialized world. And so sometimes I feel like I'm a little slower to like speak up and cut in. And sometimes I don't know if it's so much a shortcoming, because I also know it's Diane's cultural circumstance and maybe just like her birth order and who she was in her family. That sometimes I notice myself folding to that. And and this is kind of interesting because Diane is also our teacher for Gabe and I think to me it's not a shortcoming, because I feel like we can consciously talk about it together. And that's the real gift in our relationship. I think all three of us, like, I really trust us that it's okay to bring this stuff up. It makes it like less taboo,
I thought you were going to say that I'm impolite and always interrupting you, Kim.
It's helpful when you say it.
I exactly wanted to say exactly the same thing.
Exactly. Just talking over the top of her as she's trying to speak.
Yeah. Okay, so in the book, this is Diane, I wanted to give you a space. So what would you think that these Kim and Gabe need to improve, or what are their shortcomings, or what are their strengths, or what is yours in the relationship in this?
Well, I would say for all of us, our strengths can be our weaknesses depending on what's happening. So my authenticity and my emotional quickness can be chaotic and difficult. I would say for Kim that she has a very natural and a real availability to experience both the pain of others and also their dilemmas. And she's very good at reflecting that. And maybe once in a while, she feels a little bit too responsible for that, possibly, like she's supposed to do something for them. So I would say maybe that. And then with Gabe, I would say just in relationship, he likes excitement like all males do. I mean, all people do, but he likes excitement. And I think for him, sometimes, I mean, his strength is, of course, that he really is able to keep a conversation balanced in terms of listening and accomplishing and, keeping the ball moving down the field, you might say. And every so often he has to kick back and just really, really empathize and take his time.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, it's a little more challenging.
Yes. So if I can.
And they just need to listen to me more often and give me more praise, basically.
Of course.
That's the
answer. Of course. Okay. So in chapter 4, intimacy with identity, you are suggesting basically four stages: the egocentrism, ethnocentrism, and word-centricism identity, and also cosmocentrism. So again, comparing against my upbringing in a Sufi tradition of this idea that you need to go through stages, go through this stage 1 and stage 2 and stage 3 and until stage 7. So then you become God or become light or whatever that is. But reading the identities and different identities, I was just comparing this against what I learned in Sufism and in Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi. You refer him in your book, but I wonder if these are. Is it possible or doable to move from one identity, one intimate identity to the next? Is it fluid, or when we are stuck in egocentrism, we're just stuck there and we are not going to move in any other stages? Yes, Diane.
Well, So I'm thinking a little bit about what you shared about your group and how you have these different identities, Jewish and Muslim women who are together, and that each person in the room probably has a pretty well-developed egocentric identity. They know what they like, they know what they want, they know what they need, and they can let that go and attend to their own group. And certainly a group of Jewish women know how to take care of one another. A group of Muslim women know how to take care of one another. And then there are moments where they can drop that identity and they can move into taking care of people who are different than they are. You can take care of each other. You can take care of people on the podcast. You can take care of all kinds of different people. And then there are moments in the evening when your work's done and you're quiet and you've been in a state of meditation or prayer, and you can feel the presence of the divine, and you can feel that your life is complete, and you can feel that space and time are much more expansive than what we normally know. And then under stress, clunk, 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 we become more egocentric. When there's tension between groups, clunk, we become more ethnocentric. Because there's nothing, groups really, it's easy for us to move from cosmic or world-centric to ethnocentric as soon as there's a difference, because our groups have always been our place of safety. So we have the capacity for these identities. We move through them in stages with our circles of care and understanding become greater and greater, but under stress, we all tend to collapse and protect ourselves and protect those like us.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense, Sarah, as a way of thinking about it?
Yes, yes, you put it beautifully. Gabe, why should we read Compassionate Conversations?
It'll assuage my ego, number one. Number two, I think that, again, I want to go back to the choice. Like, to pick up this book is to make a choice to be compassionate in the world. And sometimes, I'll speak for myself, I've always felt some kind of cost to my current identity when I make that choice to show up in a different way that might result in a different outcome. And it might not. But again, more often than not, I'm always changed when I've made that choice in a conversation. So if that appeals to you, and if this moment of the pandemic, of this racial justice awakening, it's been pretty global in my experience. There's so many transformative, catalytic energies in our culture that to make this choice in this moment is very powerful. And so if that appeals to you, then I would encourage you to check out this book, and the practices will support you in staying true to that commitment through a conversation that you're in. Yeah.
Excellent. Kim, why should we read Compassionate Conversations?
Well, I really appreciate what you were saying just now, Gabe. And so if I can add something, I think it would be around our aspirations, like to kind of take pause to ask ourselves the what for question. And I think that many of us carry within us like a dream, a desire for things to be a little bit different from what we currently experience suffering through. Maybe that's just a natural human tendency to want to alleviate suffering. And I would add to that a want to alleviate injustice. And I think if I can, theorize about the moment that we're in, I think we're asking ourselves questions about what is right and wrong, and how are we agreeing to treat one another even as the outer structures are shaking or the outer circumstances shaking. Like, how are we going to talk to each other even with that being the case? Just to give like an example, I was reading a little bit about Nigeria this morning and the protests that are happening there against like police brutality, and just like that tussle back and forth. And here, based in the States, which is not my home place, I'm also observing this tussle back and forth. And so I can't help but notice that the questions of justice and ethics and the dream of who we could be, I think is really alive. And I would hope that this book can be like a tool or a classroom or a playground even of like what else is available for us to engage that conversation, because the conversations that they need to have in Nigeria, not so different to like what we've got in this country, So,
exactly.
so that's what my hope is.
Absolutely. So please stay put with me. We are talking with the authors of Compassionate Conversations, How to Speak and Listen from the Heart. I think all of my authors, Diane, Gabe, and Kim, mentioned of the serious issue that we are experiencing right now in our lives. So we are facing just today 285,000 people died out of coronavirus. I mean, almost all my family back in Tehran are infected, and we are just experiencing tremendous hardship. We have election coming. We have right now nothing is normal. So in the time of nothing is normal, and it's lots of conflict and lots going on in our lives, what I learned is it's almost impossible to answer any conflict with conflict. It creates more conflict. So it's impossible. Answer to any conflict is non-conflict, non-violence, peace, and coming into terms of how to get to the peace. And the basic of how to get to the peace is listening. It's listening, and it's the fact, for better or for worse, in my opinion, is the fact. Compassionate conversation tells us how to do it. We have practices in the book of how to do it, and then it's a good read because you learn about the authors, you learn about their vulnerability, you learn about their experiences, and you learn about if put in a difficult circumstances, how to really manage, or how to manage yourself for the sake of, staying human, I would say. It's a wonderful book. So Compassionate Conversations, How to Speak and Listen from the Heart. Diane Hamilton is Zen guru and compassionate leader. Gabe Wilson is leadership coach and peace builder, and Kim Loh is coach, conflict resolution, and peace specialist. So at the end of every program, you can find the book on goldtune.com. Goldtune.com is the website I manage with Mateen, and a group of international foreign correspondents write for us, and we also place a Peace Mindedly podcast on goldtune.com. So you can buy the book on goldtune.com and manage our peace journalism initiative. At the end of every program, I ask my guests to share something about peace, about kindness, about compassion. And I'm so grateful that the business of my guests today is exactly that. I mean, sharing compassion and kindness. I am going to go with whoever would like to start first, and then we move from there. So who would like to go first?
I can jump in.
Yeah,
It's just
go ahead.
A quote that I have on my desktop here from Thich Nhat Hanh. And he says, no single tradition monopolizes the truth. We must glean the best values of all traditions and work together to remove the tensions between traditions in order to give peace a chance. Excellent.
Thank you so much, Gabe. Kim?
I wanted to share a little bit actually from the final chapter of our book, if that's okay. So I'd just like to read a few paragraphs here, which evoke a good feeling for me. Boundless compassion. Enhance our awareness, evolve our skills, transform our culture, and redesign our systems and institutions. It seems like an overwhelmingly tall order, and it would be if we had to do it alone, but we don't. We're in it together. Sometimes in our Zen practice, we invoke the presence of Kanzeon, known as Guan Yin, the Bodhisattva of compassion. Her name means she who hears the cries of the world. She is often represented as having 1,000 arms and hands, and in the palm of each hand is an eye with which she sees each situation with clarity, precision, and wisdom. She holds many different tools, and implements so that she can respond skillfully to relieve the suffering of beings everywhere. Kanzeon's capacities are unlimited, her compassion is boundless, and her care extends in all directions. When we engage deeply in conversation, our listening becomes like Kanzeon's. When we respond to the suffering world together, we see how many arms and hands we have, and how many tools are at our disposal. When we all use our eyes to see, we see broadly, with intelligence and tremendous wisdom. Like Kanzeon, we have an unlimited capacity.
I agree, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, Diane.
I'd like to just thank you so much, Sara, for having us. And I'd also like to just remind your audience that peace is our deepest nature, and that when we settle our differences and when we become available to one another, we discover that we're fundamentally the same. And so that's the easiest place for us to be. So thank you so much for having us.
Excellent. The easiest place for us to do. I love the expression. So with everyone, really appreciate for being here, for being our honored guests, and I do recommend the book Compassionate Conversation. My sister kept telling me, why don't you show the book? So it's
here.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Martin, Diane, Gabe, and Kim, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Khuda Hafiz.